America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Elaine Parker, the president of the Job Creators Network Foundation. And today we're joined by Nicole Wolter. Nicole is the president and CEO of HM Manufacturing. In 2009, when Nicole got wind that her father's company was on the verge of closing its doors due to financial hardship, she left her finance career to join the family business. Within 6 years, Nicole's efforts increased sales from $80,000 to $3 million. Today, she leads HM Manufacturing as president and CEO. And Nicole will also be joining us for our second JCM Freedom Fighters Summit and Gala, May 1st through the 2nd in Savannah, Georgia. You can get your tickets at jcn2025summit.com, and you can use code JCN2025BOGO50 to get a second ticket for 50% off. The summit will feature conservatives like Kellyanne Conway, Steve Moore, Hugh Hewitt, and other leading political conservatives like Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia and Governor Youngkin from Virginia. So I hope you can make it. Well, Nicole, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, on a gloomy day, this is really fun.
Yeah, you're up in Illinois, right?
Yes, so it's always rainy, cloudy, and sad.
Well, it's also always a lot of taxes up there. Very high tax state.
Big time.
Well, tell us a little bit about HM Manufacturing. I mean, you have a great story. You've been part of this organization for a long time. You now sit on the board of the foundation. You're very outspoken. You worked with us on getting the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act over the finish line. But your story starts with discovering some really bad stuff going on in your dad's company, and you had to come in and clean it up.
Yeah. So, a little bit quickly and then kind of into the story a bit. My dad started the business in 1979. And obviously, second generation, I now had it. But my dad primarily started the business because he wanted something of his own. He is an entrepreneur at heart. He loves to tinker with his hands. He loves manufacturing. He used to race Formula One cars. So that's how that love and passion of manufacturing and gearing came into place. And so he started it pretty much from the ground up. He was in my grandparents' basement, and that's where HM comes from, homemade. And he started with doing gears and simple ratios and then brought it to market because he saw that there was a need, and he really was in the automotive and the printing press. And of course, in the 2000s, as everything starts to shift, he kind of had to navigate those waters as well. But in 2008 and 2009, as the economy is crashing, he really didn't have a good solid base around him in terms of a team to kind of help him win new business, shift in industries, try to find new avenues of revenue. But at the same time, what I ended up uncovering when I came on board in 2009 was that everyone that was out on the shop floor was actually our competitor. So they had actually started their own shell business inside of our business using our machines, our materials, our customer base, vendors, material supplies, whether it's like cardboard, just basic stuff. And it was really good that I was able to come in with fresh eyes and perspective. And of course, with the finance, you start looking at the numbers and you're like, what's going on, right? So that was super imperative. And what I really love about this industry we're in is that we've morphed now into food processing, beverage, packaging, aerospace, defense, medical, ag, oil. Like there's not one industry that we're not manufacturing for. So I think that makes us very versatile for the upswings and downswings in an economy. But we do power transmission components, gears, timing belt pulleys, lines, shafts, like a bunch of things. And we've grown. So we've grown a lot. We've grown our customer base, and it's been really great being able to kind of regroup the company and bring it to the 21st century, 22nd century, where we are. Sometimes I feel like we're in the 50th. I don't know. It's just like everything changes with technology. But we're with AI, we have a lot of interesting ERP systems and being able to kind of grow my own team, which I thought was really important after we got rid of everybody, has been really instrumental in our growth as well.
How many employees do you have now?
T3, and that's been really great. We've been kind of keeping it at that level. My team works really hard, so we're able to get a lot more throughput out with the same group that we've had for the past few years. We did add automation, and that was to primarily get rid of some of the mundane manufacturing tasks that took away from their talent so that they could be able to apply it somewhere else.
And you were a significant force with us in the fight in 2017 to get the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act over the finish line. What are some of the things that you talked about that you actually were able to accomplish in your company as a result of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act? How did, broadly, how did that bill, immediate expensing, having that 20% tax deduction, help your company achieve what it's done, since that time?
Yeah, it was so instrumental. We were able to purchase $750,000 worth of new capital equipment. And that's huge for a small business like mine to be able to do. And that created jobs. I mean, that was amazing. We got 3 different new machines. So we had to have 3 different and new people. So that was a new hire, as well as having a 401k that was matched. We were able to pay 100% healthcare for all the employees. We were able to give bonuses and raises, like things that we weren't able to do because it was very stagnant and we didn't really have a lot of movement to be able to do that in our bottom line, in our cash flow as well. So that was super exciting for everybody. And some other really cool things is we were able to give back to the community. So some of the old machines, because we replaced it with new ones, we were able to donate that to our local high schools that have manufacturing programs. We were able to start having like a little feeder program from the high schools and an apprenticeship program into our company and have paid internships and apprenticeship programs. So it was really cool to be able to do so much with that Tax Cuts and Jobs Act because it did transform this business so that we could now elevate ourselves to like the next echelon in manufacturing.
I love that you gave back to high schools like that and created that feeder program because, you don't find shop and things like that in high schools anymore.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's been because of monetary reasons that the school systems can't have those types of classes that foster, developing those skill sets in kids who, maybe they don't want to go to college and they're better with their hands and, frankly, studying, gender reaffirming care is probably not what they want to do for the rest of their life. And some kids just, they don't want to go to college and they're not meant to go to college. So I love that you did that. I actually wasn't aware of that part of the story. And that's actually a really important aspect of what you were able to do. Explain for the nerds like me out there, why I always hate going into the weeds, but on this one, I think we should, because as you know, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is, as I like to say, on the bubble. I mean, it's going to expire. It's not that it's going to be voted out. No one has to do anything. It's going away at the end of this year. Parts of it have already expired along the way over the last few years, including immediate expensing.
Yeah.
There are 2 provisions that I have been told were just fantastic for small business owners who are structured as pass-through entities. Explain the pass-through entity, what that 20% deduction means, and what the immediate expensing means. I know you mentioned you bought a piece of machinery, but how does that play into it? So walk our listeners through that.
Well, for us, it's more so on a twofold. One, the immediate expensing is great for tax purposes. Being in Illinois, we get taxed quite heavily. And so to be able to kind of take that and immediately take that off is huge. We're able to do so much more, whether it's tooling based, putting into R&D, being able to take that grouping of cash, not really cash, but to take that grouping that's kind of left on that bottom line and expense it into something else really has been able to take shape of what we're able to do out there. I've been able to do training and be able to pay for that, which is huge. When you get to pay for your employees to kind of get to that next level, they feel like they're an investment, and they are, and I want them to feel that way. But when you start to hear these issues where it's going to start going away, you start to think, okay, now you're taking away that expensing, you're taking away the ability to grow, you're taking away the ability to give back to the community, you're taking away the ability to give back to your team and your employees that have worked so hard that they feel like, they'd like to get a little bit of a boost, and they deserve that. And so every little thing matters and it counts. And it's just really a shame that, when we start looking at buying a new piece of equipment, especially now, we have a lot coming down the pipeline for aerospace and defense, and we would like to purchase a machine. We're kind of hesitant to do that because if this expires before we're able to kind of launch that, I don't think you really can afford it, especially in the past few years with the high inflation. And, we've definitely had a slowdown in the market for manufacturing. I don't think it makes feasible sense to go do that to your bottom line and your cash flow without some guarantees. And so being able to take that deduction is really huge for a small business like ours.
So if the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act expires, essentially you're saying you're going to change your expansion plans.
Correct. Yes, we have to. Like I said, in Illinois, we have our own issues with terrible policies and high taxes. But when you start to look at an overview of what we've been hit with in the past few years, which is high energy costs as well, surcharges with materials, every little burden, and even down to property and casualty, which has gone up about 35%. Healthcare has risen tremendously year over year. And so when you start to think about all the great things that we did for our employees, you start to feel like, okay, where can we cut? Where can there be savings in order to keep moving forward? I mean, in manufacturing as a small business, we don't have high margins to begin with. And so taking away this little bit of a prize for us really will change our mindset and what we do. And not like we would lay people off, but it definitely would change our buying and our strategy when it comes to new equipment and then adding on whether it's a new employer automation as well.
Why do you think, sort of broadly, that policymakers don't understand that businesses can be encouraged through policies to expand and hire and create jobs, and they can be discouraged and do exactly the opposite with other policies? Like, where do you think the disconnect is there?
Well, they've never ran a business and they've probably never worked in something that wasn't being at a law firm or something of that nature, right? It's very different when you're hands-on and you have to fight every day for payroll, every day for cash flow, every day for sales, every day for whatever comes your way in a business. I can't tell you how many times, even down in 2010, where my dad and I didn't take paychecks because the business was suffering. And it happens from time to time where you're more concerned about your employees than you are yourself. And of course, they don't understand that because when you've never had to go through those hardships and make those kinds of decisions, you don't understand what it's like. And I also think it's not helpful that you get everybody from your big Fortune 500 and 100 that's on TV all the time with like insane profits, insane margins. And so that is where I think it all goes wrong because they think that they're the bad guy and everyone that owns a business or has a profitable business or in manufacturing that we're all making, hundreds of millions of dollars, and we're not. I mean, sometimes we're lucky if we break even year over year, right? I mean, there is that. And so I think the issue is that they're not talking to local businesses. They're not going and understanding, and they just don't know. So they're never going to really fight for us because they've never had to feel it.
Hi, everyone. I want to personally invite all of you to come to JCN's second Freedom Fighters Summit and Gala on May 1st and 2nd in beautiful Savannah, Georgia. This event is going to be a who's who of conservative political figures. Media stars like Hugh Hewitt, Sarah Carter, Trish Regan, and Mike Gallagher will be joined by political minds like Kellyanne Conway and Steve Moore, as well as Governors Glenn Youngkin from Virginia and Brian Kemp from Georgia. You'll also get to meet yours truly and Alfredo Ortiz, the hosts of Main Street Matters, and many of our past guests. There'll be great entertainment too, from the comedy legend of Rob Schneider to music by country superstar Lee Greenwood. There's a limited number of seats, so reserve your spot today. Go to jcn2025summit.com and use promo code JCN2025 BOGO50 to get a second ticket at 50% off. Again, go to jcn2025summit.com now and use promo code JCN2025 BOGO50 to get a second ticket at 50% off. And get your tickets before they sell out. We continue to obviously try to elevate stories like yours. We believe Main Street small business owners are the voices that should be on the media all the time. But you're right that the default is to go to those Fortune 500 CEOs, they're looking for an ROI for their shareholders. And you see these multi-billion dollar, revenues coming in on these companies, and you lose sight of really the small business owner and what everyday life means for them as the chief cook and bottle washer. That's the tough part.
100%.
You're going to be on a panel called Tax Cuts Now at our summit and gala in a couple of weeks. It's called Tax Cuts Now, Make Small Businesses Great Again. Trish Regan of the Trish Regan Show is going to be moderating the panel, and she's fantastic. I mean, she covers economics like crazy, so she's fantastic. But the panel's really going to look at how President Trump and the Republican Congress can really expand and make the tax cuts not only permanent, but expand them and make them even better. So what we're pushing for is to increase that 20% deduction to 25%. And of course, to bring back the immediate expensing, which allows you to purchase that equipment, as we were saying before. You're going to be the lone small business owner on the panel. And I really thought it was important. You have great people with you. Don't worry. You have Grover Norquist at Americans for Tax Reform. So he's the tax guy, right? Jonathan Williams over at ALEC will be with you, and Congresswoman Beth Van Dwyne, who is also a small business owner in Texas and Dallas. But you bring with you real experience on the front lines. You're also a manufacturer. So you've kind of staring at the tariffs head on right now, and can, maybe you can give us a perspective on how the tariffs are impacting you, or what you're seeing as a manufacturer. Give us some perspective there broadly.
Yeah. So, I've said this a few times to others as well. It's kind of a double-edged sword. While it's great, it's also impactful in a bad way too. So for us, for aerospace and defense, obviously it's industry specific. Everything has to be made here in the US, which is great for us. Okay. But we also have to be mindful that a lot of the materials that we need do come from Europe, because they're called DFARS. And so it's, by designated foreign entities that are allowed to sell materials to us, because we don't have the foundries to be able to keep up or to be able to sell the types of materials we have. So now that we're back to the negotiations of 0% and 0%, sounds great. Let's just hope it sticks. Some other issues too is that, in order for us to make a profile on our gears or timing belt pulleys, we need hubs. And those hubs and those materials that have carbide and tungsten come from China, unfortunately. So obviously with that 104%, you start to kind of freak out of, you can't always pass it on to your customer, because we have to use this in order to make the products. So you have to absorb that. And then on the other end, we are seeing where a lot of our OEMs that we produce products for and components for are now asking us to requote a lot of things, that there's movement, there's excitement, there's some life there. However, on the other side too, we've also had purchase orders be put on hold for food processing, beverage, and packaging because they're afraid of the turmoil and the uncertainty. And so, we're in a holding pattern for a lot of the industries, and some other ones were really going gangbusters. So, it's a twofold scenario. We do a lot of work for an Italian company that's in Italy. And some of the components that we have to use that are, put in like an assembly do come from China. And those are now 90 to 120 days out. Plus, with tariffs and everything that's included, we have now decided that we will be making those components in-house, even though it will be a little more expensive. We'll be running those in higher volumes, and we've already been working with our customer to get larger EAUs to absorb the cost so that there is no extra there. So in a way, it's keeping us busy. Now we get to think of a different product line that we could now market, that we could do for some of our other customers. So, it's very specific in certain ways. A lot of our customers are upset because their castings do come from China or Taiwan. So
Right.
It is this mixed bag of good and not good. And so I think what we've all been trying to say is let's just see what happens. Let's just, take a deep breath. I know President Trump likes to do these aggressive maneuvers to get people to the table. So let's just kind of wait it out, not look at the markets, and just kind of take a deep breath.
Have you been able to share any of this kind of feedback directly with the administration or any of your representatives in Congress?
No, I haven't been able to, but I would love to because I think it'd be good for them to hear because it is working in a little way. I mean, obviously, you can't just turn on the light and all of U.S. manufacturing is going to come to life. It does take time. And I think what happened during COVID was very symbolic of how underrepresented manufacturing is, right? We were so busy and so inundated with orders, we couldn't keep up. We didn't have the infrastructure, we didn't have the equipment, we didn't have the people. And so, these types of scenarios, while good, we have to remind ourselves that it's going to take some time to be able to kind of get back to that amazing U.S. manufacturing. But I would love to tell them that it's working at least a little bit on our end and that we're excited to see it because, this is our livelihood. And I'd love to be able to hire more team members and be able to give back to the community some more. I mean, as a whole, if we're not producing something, we're losing. So it's important.
Yeah. Well, we will help you do that.
Okay.
And you're going to be sitting next. You're going to be sitting next to Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne, who sits on the Small Business Committee as well. So I know she will appreciate that kind of feedback on the tariffs too. And it seems like the tariff conversation could actually lead and leak into almost every panel across the board at that summit, at our summit coming up. So I'm looking forward to it. Do you feel like the American public is giving the president some runway to do this, but he has a limited time to get it done?
I think it depends on the base. So while I love social media, I always like to see what the other side is saying. And they're giving him no grace, no leeway, no time. It's an immediate. They're looking at the markets. It's a scare tactic. The media does a terrible job. Well, I think they do it on purpose, is to get everybody in a tizzy and freaking out, where we don't realize that 90% of Americans really aren't in the stock market. It's more for like your top 10%, right? So, trying to let people understand and educate and let them understand that this is good as a whole for every demographic is great. But I do think for our base too, right, for the Republican side, we are giving him leeway. I just think we all know that if it doesn't come home with a win come midterms, it's going to be brutal. So he doesn't have a lot of time, but he does have some time. For us, I'm just kind of waiting it out. For the Democratic side, they're just ready with some pitchforks. As you can see that they're all over with their protests in Chicago and everywhere else. They're just They're looking for failure in every sense of the way, which is sad because at the end of the day, we're all Americans and we all should want to win and we all should want to have things made in America and bring more jobs essentially and higher paying jobs is what we should all be excited for.
Well, I mean, before we came on air, obviously we were talking a little bit at Job Creators Network. I mean, we're not tariff people, and I think most people aren't. It's not that I want tariffs, but I understand what the strategy is. I understand that this is a tool and he is being aggressive. I mean, he wrote The Art of the Deal. I mean, he is a master negotiator. And these tariffs, although they were not as sweeping in his first term, they were successful. He did bring in revenue and it did work. And it must have been somewhat successful because Biden kept them in place and increased them even more. So there must have been something good there. But what he's trying to do is fundamentally change the relationships so that they are fair. And the only way to do that, I mean, why should we pay more? Why should we have higher tariffs when we are the largest consumer economy in the world? I mean, every country wants to do business with us, particularly China. And if we're not here for them, they want our markets. They need our markets. And as tough as they're standing, I just feel like we can win this. I just worry that the president has a limited time because of the pain that small businesses and even people in this stock market, our 401ks, things like that are feeling. But that is what I think makes the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, extending and expanding those Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which is totally separate, but makes it even more important because it gives small business owners certainty to make decisions and plans like you're considering. Don't you think that just makes it so important?
Totally. And, I think we also forget too that President Trump is not a politician. He's a businessman. And so he's going to do what business people do. And sometimes that's being rough and tough. And I would say during President Trump's his first time around, we saw such a surge in U.S. manufacturing. When President Biden was in, we saw a lot of our legacy parts move to India for cheaper alternatives. And now we're starting to see the movement come back with President Trump in his second term. So yes, I agree. We do need fair trade. We do need that. And free too, because we've been doing it. So why is everyone else not doing it for us? And you're right. We do have such a huge market and we have a lot of buying power. The U.S. consumer has a lot more money to spend than others that are even in Europe. I mean, those salaries in Europe are a third of what we make here in the US. So they do need our markets. China needs our markets. But again, you're right. We do need it where we do feel secure and safe in the decisions we're making for growth, for strategy, and for being able to keep up should all of this start to reshore again.
Absolutely. Well, Nicole, I cannot wait to see the panel that you're going to be on, Tax Cuts Now, Making Small Businesses Great Again. I think you're going to be just a great addition to that panel and obviously excellent things to say. For those of you listening, you can join us in Savannah, Georgia, May 1st and 2nd. For the JCN Second Freedom Fighters Summit and Gala. And to register, you can go to JCN Summit 2025. You can use promo code JCN 2025 BOGO50 and get your second ticket free. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today and listening to Nicole. Main Street Matters is part of the Salem Podcast Network. New episodes debut every Wednesday and Friday. Please subscribe to the show at salempodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from. And we'll be back soon with another episode. Bye for now.